oh dear, Coquitlam, I think. Coquitlam? Talahatam? Okay, I apologize, but I don't really know how to say the new name of this park yet. But I will learn, and that's a commitment I'm making today. I also want to say we did invite members of the Coquitlam Nation, whose territory we are on and whose reserve is actually by the Colony Farm, the main parking lot where you might have parked. But unfortunately, it seems like they were unable to be here. But they have been partners on this project, and Zach will speak a bit about that too in a while. But I don't want to keep you all boiling in the sun, so I'm just going to jump into it. And once I'm done, I'm going to pass it to Zach so he can share a little bit about his PhD study, kind of so that you're all seeing science in action today, and that's so exciting to me. And once we've done that, we'll pass it on to our Parliamentary Secretary, Finn Donnelly, from Water, Land and Natural Resources Ministry. And then we've got pulling up here, oh here we are, we've got Ron McKinnon MP for this writing as well. Hi Ron, thanks for making it. Or you could grab some shade if you want, it might be a couple of minutes. Yeah, whatever you want to put in. Yes. So I am the Habitat Programs Director at Watershed Watch Salmon Society. We're a salmon conservation and advocacy organization based here in British Columbia. We have our roots in Coquitlam, and many of us still live in this watershed. So we're very proud to be doing work to raise awareness of the Coquitlam River, issues along the river, and today we're talking all about dikes and floodplains and how we can live in a way that protects our community and supports our fish all at the same time. So the area that we're standing on right now is a prime example of what I'm talking about. As many of you know, we are standing on a dike. A dike is literally a wall, and it's built in a floodplain. And a floodplain is a low-lying area of land that along a river, like we have here. We've got the Coquitlam River, but it meets the Fraser, and this whole area is a floodplain. And I want to show you my map. I wanted to show you my, oh yeah, oh my gosh, thank you. My map here that kind of shows you the entire Lower Fraser floodplain, approximately from the Agassiz area out to the Salish Sea. We are, of course, here in the park, and as you can see, these black boxes on here, they identify about 156 flood boxes and pump stations that are impacting the ability for salmon to move into and out of the floodplain. And why is that important? The Lower Fraser, the Fraser River, we know all about Fraser River salmon. We've got all 5 varieties of salmon, and we've got trout. And Fraser salmon are constantly at risk from a number of different things. Their populations are in continuous decline. One of the issues, it's not only overfishing, it's not only the aquaculture farms, but it's also habitat degradation. And one of the issues we've found are dikes like this, placed in and along the lower mainland, the lower reaches of the Fraser, are affecting their ability to access much needed overwintering and rearing habitat, such as the waterways behind us. Little salmon, little juveniles will come down the Fraser River, duck into the Coquitlam, or we even have salmon spawn in the Coquitlam. Will duck into these little side channels and tributaries and creeks, learning how to growing, learning how to hunt, becoming more resilient so that when they head out into the ocean, they are ready for whatever the ocean has in store for them. However, if they don't have access to all of this habitat, and we've identified 1,500 kilometers of salmon habitat impacted by dikes, if they don't have access to this, they end up being flushed out into the estuary and out into the ocean far too quickly, and then they're unable. The chances of survival are much less. So we think we need to do everything we can in our power to try to ensure salmon have a good start to life, and that means ensuring they have access to this natural habitat behind us. Also, we live in this floodplain. About 2.5 million people live in the lower mainland. And and it's highly developed. So how do we protect our communities while ensuring salmon have access to much needed habitat? We know that about 70% of dikes and flood infrastructure in BC is at very poor quality, and should we have another flood like we did in 2021, those atmospheric rivers and floodings that happened, our communities are at high risk. So we know these flood control structures need to be upgraded. Let's do it in a way that's fish friendly. And solutions do exist, and that's what Zach has been studying. So I'm going to pass it over to you, Zach, to say some words on that, and then we'll pass that.
Awesome. Thank you, Lena. Thank you all for coming out to Salmon Day. This is literally a dream of mine, is to have a big community day where we have a bunch of fish that kids and adults and whoever wants to can come down and look at the fish that live in the floodplain, look at the area that we're running our work, look at the problems that we're dealing with, unfortunately, and then look at the solutions that we're trying to come up with. So the fact that you guys are here is the reason that we're doing all this work. So thank you all so much. As Lena was alluding to, we messed up. We have messed up. We took a floodplain. So if you can see all the way out to that mountain range there, everywhere that's low-lying, all this area would be floodplain. And that floodplain is super important. So basically, when the river backs up, when the tides come up and the ocean is pushing back on the lower river, it pours into these low-lying lands. And if you can imagine, there's lots of bugs and hiding places and lots of good habitat that's upstream of this area and is essential for juvenile salmon as they're rearing and growing and trying to survive to get out to the ocean. Unfortunately, we channelized a lot of our rivers by putting up things like these dikes, these big walls that sort of constrict it from getting into its natural area. And the only connection that we have with getting fish back in here is through these floodgates. And floodgates are very poorly designed for fish. They are designed entirely for keeping water out of this area so that we can use it for agriculture, so we can live there, so we can have commercial businesses there. And that's why we don't want it flooded. Unfortunately, by not flooding it, we're also restricting fish access. So fish end up, when they want to move into these areas, they end up not being able to. They have to stay in the main stem of the river, which, I don't know if you've ever swam in the main stem of the Coquitlam River, but it's not the easiest. I'll tell you that much. So instead of eking out an existence and trying to basically hold on for dear life in the main stem of the river, these fish should be in the floodplain, hiding from predators, feeding on invertebrates, feeding on predators, and adding to the natural system that's upstream of these areas. And so we find ourselves in this really unique opportunity where a lot of our flood infrastructure is over 100 years old. This dike that we're standing on is over 100 years old because it serviced an old farm that was upstream of this area. Now, this infrastructure is not graded for what's coming down the pipeline. We've got a lot of changes that are going to come to our river systems and to our snowmelt systems that feed the rivers that we live in. And so unfortunately, these walls are simply not high enough to protect us from the floods, and the flood infrastructure that we have in is not graded for those extreme conditions that are expected to come. So although it's kind of scary, we have to fix this flood infrastructure to protect ourselves and protect the land that we're currently living on. It also provides us with this really unique opportunity to allow for fish to access these habitats by making improved fish-friendly floodgates, which is what I study. So basically what we're looking at, we're currently standing on top of a self-regulating floodgate. Out of 156 floodgates on the Lower Fraser, how many do we think are self-regulating fish-friendly floodgates? Take a guess. A dozen? Some very informed people know there's only 2. Now, I'm not a very good mathematician, but you can do the numbers. That's not a lot. So we've currently opened up a few tens of kilometers of floodplain habitat that was previously inaccessible. There's currently over 80% of the floodplain habitat that is inaccessible to juvenile salmon. And that's not just juvenile salmon on the Coquitlam River. That's juvenile salmon all the way up the Harrison, all the way up the Fraser. Because these fish, when they leave their natal rivers, they don't go right out to the ocean. They come down to this lower area and they move into the floodplain and overwinter. So they spend from around November until February surviving, growing, hiding from predators in this area. Unfortunately, if we don't open up the access, they don't get in. And if they don't get in, they don't survive, plain and simple. it's very important that fish get into these areas for nursery habitat. So the way that the self-regulating floodgate works is it's designed to basically be adjustable. So